Would you want to live in a world with magic? Not the firework kind, not the kind that shouts, the kind that lives in old teapots and forgotten forests, in the folds of long cloaks and embroidered hems. That's the kind I like to make. These three unicorn sisters, Aster, Marigold, and Vesper, arrived in late August when the air smells like turning pages and falling leaves. They came quietly. I didn't even hear them at first. Only the soft clink of a needle in a teacup. And then they were here. I made their faces from a mold, a very old porcelain figurine, old-fashioned, gentle, a little distant, because they needed to look like they belonged to another century, to a time of lanterns and mist, of stories told with a candle burning low. This cast, like a memory, became the shared beginning of the three witches, the kind of face that's never surprised, but always curious. They don't live in our world, not really. They belong to a place that appears only when the air turns crisp and the last warm breeze carries a smell of fallen leaves. That's when the forest makes room for them. They walk together, always, though not always seen. They're guardians, in their own quiet way, each with a season stitched into her heart. Some say they were born from a cloud of breath on a cold morning. Others, that they used to be stars and simply fell to earth to take care of it. Their bodies began as sketches, then frames of wire, wrapped in wool, wrapped again in time, and cotton, and silence. Each gesture stitched slowly, each fold imagined. They didn't rush me. They never do. The days grew shorter while I worked, but some things ask for time. A single fold in a sleeve, a curl of hair caught in glue, a faded ribbon that looked like nothing until it suddenly looked like her. Some pieces feel like they remember who they are. They come from a land that doesn't show up on maps, where stories are carried in shawls and magic rides in the steam of tea. They remember things we've forgotten, like how to keep promises to ourselves. They are guardians of the quiet, those moments between moments, the soft in-between. If you ever find yourself lost, light a candle and leave a bit of bread by the window. They'll know you need company. Sometimes, in the hush of early evening, the forest seems to breathe, not with wind, but with memories. Among the trees, under mossy roots, old stories rest like sleeping animals. You might trip over one if you're not careful, or maybe if you are. There are books, hidden in hollow trunks and under floorboards, with pressed fern leaves in place of chapters and ink that smells faintly of cinnamon. The sisters read them by lantern light, curled up in velvet cloaks, their boots still muddy from the woods. They trade stories like secrets, and sometimes, if you listen at the right moment, you'll hear one begin with "long ago" in a place not far from here. The dresses they wear aren't sewn for fashion, they're stitched from dreams. Old tea-dyed napkins, pieces of attic curtains, tiny scraps of grandmother's aprons, beads like berries, thread like time, each one a spell of its own. And when the world feels too loud, too bright, you might find yourself dreaming of them, walking between the pages of a forgotten book, down a forest path lined with moonlight and mist. The first sister is Marigold. She is autumn's laughter, the rustle of dried corn husks, the warmth of homecoming. Her dress is a patchwork of gingham and florals, like something passed down through many hands. In her pocket, a string of dried herbs, maybe cloves, maybe something sweeter. Marigold is the kind who lights lanterns even if no one's coming. She believes in making things cozy even when she's alone, especially then. She doesn't say much, but you always feel heard. And if your thoughts get tangled, she'll untie them with a smile and the scent of cinnamon. She's the one who whispers, "Let's rest before we need it." Some say she talks to clouds, that she braids mist into her hair and wraps dew into her shawl. On the coldest mornings, you might find tiny frost flowers on your window. Those are her postcards, written in ice and quiet. She believes that nothing is ever truly broken, just waiting to be tended. Children and animals find her first. Maybe it's her patience, or maybe it's the way she hums while pouring tea into chipped cups that smell of lavender and rain. Sometimes she leaves letters in the forest, pressed between moss and stone. They're written in a language no one speaks, but everyone understands. The kind of language that lives in dreams and lullabies. Her windows glow before the sun rises, and if you pass quietly enough, you might hear her stirring jam with a wand or mending a tear in the wind with a silver needle. There are rumors that she once turned a storm into a story, that every raindrop carried a word, and if you listened closely, the puddles would whisper poems back to you. She collects forgotten buttons and broken feathers, not because she's a collector, but because she believes everything lost can still be held with care. When you leave her garden, the scent of rosemary clings to your thoughts for days, and your dreams, they feel a little warmer somehow. Some say she keeps a kettle always warm, not on a stove, but on the memory of an old friendship. No one's quite sure how, but the tea never grows cold. Her pockets are full of stories, not written ones, sewn. A stitch for every secret whispered into her scarf on windy afternoons. She once gifted a fox a patch for his coat. Not a new one, just enough to mend the tear where his sorrow leaked out. In her cupboard, you'll find more than sugar and dried herbs. You'll find time, folded neatly between napkins, and a tiny glass jar labeled "Laughter from Last October." And when she sings, very softly, just under her breath, the candle flames flicker like they remember something, but won't tell. Then there's Vesper. Vesper wears the night. Not the scary kind. The kind that listens. The kind of night that holds your secrets without asking for them. Her dress is black, with tiny beads that glimmer like faraway stars. If you follow her, the air turns still. The forest hushes. Vesper sees the paths others miss. She doesn't rush. She protects not by fighting, but by witnessing. Her power is the quiet kind. You'll find her sitting still for hours, not lost, just deeply present. You don't talk to Vesper. You sit beside her until your own thoughts quiet down. Some say her shadow is softer than velvet, and her silence holds more stories than any book. In the evenings, when the wind sounds like pages turning, you might feel her nearby, not watching, just keeping company. She has a way of making you feel safe, even when you don't know why. Even the wild foxes pause around her, respectful and unafraid. Her dress carries whispers of midnight conversations and starlit walks. Tiny beads stitched across her collar catch light like distant galaxies, a constellation sewn just for her. If you leave a candle burning in an old window, she might visit. Not to grant wishes, but to remind you that someone sees you, truly sees you, and that you don't always have to explain yourself. Vesper's presence lingers like the hush before snowfall, comforting, still, sacred in its softness. But Vesper is never truly alone. Tucked in the folds of her worn black skirt rides a bear the size of a plum, his fur soft from time, patched with careful hands. He doesn't talk, but when you're near, you feel braver, like someone small believes in you, and that's enough. No one knows where he came from, maybe stitched from a dream, maybe gifted to her by a child who no longer needed him, but knew she might. At night, he climbs to her shoulder and watches the sky with her. They don't wish on stars. They remember things, like the scent of pine sap, or the way a secret feels when you keep it safe. People ask me, do you plan every detail? I don't. I follow. The fabric crumples just so, and that tells me what to do next. A wrinkle, a smudge of paint, a crack in the glaze. It's all part of the map. And when I hold them at last, when the glue is dry and the needles are silent, I don't think I made this. I think she's here. Together, they form something whole, a circle, lantern, flame, smoke. When you watch them being made, paper, thread, color, wool, it's not just craft, it's memory. It's care made visible. They will sit eventually on a shelf, but for now, you're with them, witnessing their becoming. They weren't meant to be perfect. They were meant to carry presence. One thread of wool, one finger of glue, a whisper of old lace, a flicker of personality in a stroke of blue under the eye. And then comes Aster, a whisper of morning. Dressed in white with navy polka dots, her sheer hood catching the first light. Aster is the beginning of something. The mist before the world fully wakes. She carries no spells, no herbs, just presence. The kind that makes a room feel gentler. When she walks, even leaves pause. She believes in slowness, in listening, in small daily rituals. Aster is the one who makes the tea, not just for drinking, but as a way of saying, I'm here. She hums sometimes, low and soft, like a lullaby the wind might carry. She gathers dew in tiny glass jars, not for potions, but for remembering. She says the morning remembers everything, and dew is just its way of writing things down. She folds notes into acorn caps and tucks them behind roots. Not everyone notices, but sometimes children find them and suddenly feel brave again. Her sleeves smell like soap and dry pages, like someone you used to know but can't quite place. Someone who once tied your scarf before a cold walk, or held your dreams while you were too tired to carry them. Aster believes that light is a kind of spell, and that being gentle is the strongest magic of all. She keeps time not in hours, but in moments. The sound of a spoon against a cup, the flutter of a curtain, the sigh of a story just beginning. I stained the dresses in strong black tea, letting the scent of old kitchens and quiet libraries settle into the fabric. Then, a brush of watercolor here, a shadow of oil there, like time had passed through them, leaving a whisper behind. Their hair was next. Silk fibers, unruly and soft, not unlike memories. Twisted into locks, felted gently, pinned in place with care. Each hairstyle different, but not by design. They chose for themselves. Marigold's hair curled around her ears like laughter. Aster's fell long and straight, like morning rain. And Vesper, well, Vesper's hair was the sky before night fully arrives, wild and full of sparks. They don't speak much, but they sit together in my studio, the way they might have sat under trees centuries ago in a forest that may or may not have existed. Their dresses are stitched with wandering threads, not perfect, but honest, not polished, but full of soul. Beads stitched like stars, because sometimes you need to carry light with you. Some dolls are made, others arrive. These three arrived. These dolls, like tiny gatekeepers, hold pieces of that forgotten magic. A lullaby never recorded, a goodbye never said. If you tilt your head just so and let your eyes blur a little, you might see that outline of a story not told, but felt. Not loud, not fast, but the kind of story that lingers in old velvet, in the scent of wood smoke, in the hush between snowflakes. And maybe you'll never see them again, but something in you will remember that there are still soft things made by hand, that guardians don't always look fierce, that magic can wear a gingham apron. 3 sisters. Mist. Lantern. Night. Aster. Marigold. Vesper. They aren't meant to sit on a shelf and be forgotten. They are meant to keep someone company, to guard the bits of life that don't always get noticed. The steam on your mirror, the crinkle in your favorite socks, the dream you forgot by morning. They remember for you. If these 3 whisper to you, If one of them reminded you of someone you loved, leave a small light in the comments. Even just a word. It helps me keep going. Until next time, may your windows fog softly, your tea steep long, and your imagination never sleep.